This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
Oh, what a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Game Night here on Monday on 97.3 ESPN, 97.3 ESPN mobile app, and live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter for you all to consume and watch the show as well. Text board is open also at 609-403-0973. Sixers basketball tonight coming up. A little breaking news popped off just about 30 minutes ago. Doc Rivers confirmed that Joel Embiid will not play tonight. So very important news there. Joel Embiid, and you kind of felt it coming, right? If you've been watching this team, been following this team closely for the last 2-3 weeks, you kind of felt that a Joel Embiid off day was kind of in the making. It was kind of in the works. So this will be the game he gets off. It'll be tonight versus Detroit. Can the Sixers win a game that Joel Embiid is not playing? This year, the Sixers are 0-3 so far when Joel Embiid does not play in a game. So Joel Embiid is more than just an MVP candidate who puts up gaudy stats. He literally is the most important and valuable player for this 76ers team. I mean, just think about how crazy that is. That's how bad the situation is, that you can't win a game without him. Now, that might change tonight, and we'll talk about that coming up with Kevin McCormick, our Sixers beat writer for 97.3 ESPN.com. He'll join me coming up at 6:20 to get more into that. Of course, we got to talk about the NFL championship games yesterday as well. And don't forget, a little bit later in the hour, I will give you my DraftKings Sportsbook picks of the night. Going a little basketball again tonight. Let's see how we do with our picks for the night, as always. But I got to start with the game we saw yesterday because, contrary to popular opinion, Tom Brady didn't win the game yesterday. I know the win may be in his win column as a quarterback, but Tom Brady didn't win the game yesterday. And I'm bringing this up because this is something very specific to the Eagles as we go through this offseason. Tom Brady threw 3 interceptions yesterday. Now, Aaron Rodgers threw 1, but Brady threw 3. Whose team won? Brady. Why? Because we talked about this over the weekend on Friday and Saturday. The team whose defense showed up on Sunday was the team that won the game. What did the Bucs defense do? 5 sacks, 5 tackles for loss on run plays, 4 deflected passes. And don't forget, on top of those 5 sacks, they also hit Aaron Rodgers another 5 times. So they were getting to the quarterback. They were defending the pass. They were stopping the run. Because teams win championships, not individuals. We're so obsessed with the individual stat line. So as we look ahead to the Super Bowl, which we have 2 weeks to do that, and it's going to be a phenomenal one, Brady versus Mahomes. I mean, could you want anything more? I know a lot of us thought before the season that could be a very, very likely possibility, but there's a part of you that wondered, how realistic is it? And now you're going to get it. Tampa in their own home stadium. The Chiefs are going to be going into hostile territory. Reed versus Arians. Todd Bowles. Steve Spagnuolo. Think about how many coaching trees are involved all over the place in this game. It's going to be wild. I'm so looking forward to it. But I also know that there's an Eagles element to this. And that Eagles element is there's a lot of former Eagles involved in this game. Todd Bowles used to coach with the Eagles. Andy Reid, of course. Steve Spagnuolo used to coach with the Eagles. LaShawn McCoy is sitting on the Bucs bench. He might get another Super Bowl by doing nothing again, which is good for him. I mean, I'm not holding against the guy, that's for sure. But still, it is funny. It's funny to watch how these things go down. And as we do watch them go down, I am looking at how very intricate these teams got here, because teams win championships. And for the Philadelphia Eagles, in the current sense, not the past sense, with Nick Sirianni, this team has to build a team to win. Because even if Carson Wentz comes back and he throws 27 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, you could still go 8-8. Or Carson Wentz could come back and throw 20 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, and you go 10-6. The quarterback's performance is only a part of the picture. And for as many games Carson Wentz lost for this team, which I argue were 3-4, the rest of the team has to stack up. And when I look at this coaching staff, I am trying to stay open-minded. I am trying to be a person who is not being reactionary, who is not being emotionally led. I'm trying to be someone who doesn't let the moment get the best of me. But daggone it, when I look at the fact that you hired Shane Steichen to be your offensive coordinator, I'm just not loving it. And here's why. I have been hoping for a long time now. I have been hoping all year long that whatever happened after the Eagles season, they would make some changes that I could vibe with. All year long, I was hoping that whatever happens this season, the Eagles can make some changes that I can get on board with. I didn't love them firing Doug Peterson, but I understood it. I didn't love them hiring Nick Sirianni, but it made a lot of sense to me, honestly. And I was totally on board with it. But when Sirianni goes out there and brings in Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon, I do have questions. Questions that I don't know if I have all the answers to yet, but I definitely have questions. But I'm also reminded of what I saw yesterday. If the Eagles can build a team that can win, they can do it. I know that they're quote-unquote in salary cap hell. Whatever that fully means, nobody really knows, because at the end of the day, how many teams have we thought had no cap space find a way to get cap space? We know that the Philadelphia Eagles are a team that has a lot of guys coming off of injuries. So you expect to have a lot more healthy roster going into the season. You expect Brandon Brooks and Lane Johnson to be back. You would expect them to have a different look on offense because of who the coaches are. You would expect them to utilize Miles Sanders and Jalen Reagor more effectively. Also, Jonathan Gannon is coming in here, so you would expect them to be a little bit different in terms of their defensive mentality, their defensive philosophy. And all those differences and all those changes could lead to something special. But as we saw yesterday, Tom Brady did not win that game for Tampa. He did not. The person who won that game for Tampa yesterday was Todd Bowles. Defenses still win championships in the NFL, despite popular opinion to the otherwise. Defenses win. You're telling me that Tom Brady deserves that win in the win column next to his name? Absolutely not. But that's how the system works. We count wins for quarterbacks even when they play mediocre to poor. Trent Dilfer, Brad Johnson, Mark Rippon, none are going to the Hall of Fame, but they all still have Super Bowl rings. You know why? Because their teams won the championship, and they were a part of said team. And for the Eagles, when I look at these coaching situations, am I thrilled about the coordinator hires? No. Do I love the coordinator hires? No. But am I willing to hit the pause button and try to understand why Nick Sirianni is bringing in two guys who have just as much NFL experience as he does, yes, I am willing to take that time to understand. And I recommend you do as well, because look at who he hired. Jonathan Gannon was one of the top defensive candidates out there. There were multiple teams that wanted him, including the Bears and the Chargers who were looking at him. He is an up-and-coming guy in the NFL. He is someone that the league knows about. You heard Jeff Mosher say on Football at 4. Jeffrey Lurie, the Eagles owner, knew who Jonathan Gannon was and was happy that Sirianni wanted to bring him here. Jonathan Gannon, the defensive backs coach for the Colts. So I get that one, and I'm totally on board with that one. But Shane Steichen is a guy that, I got to be honest with you, I'm not loving it. Do I hate it? No, because I'm willing to give the guy a chance. But I was really, really hoping that they would go out and get a guy with a little bit more experience in terms of coaching in the NFL. Because we know Steichen has been around the NFL for a decade, all with the Chargers except for one sole year with the Browns. But I was hoping you might get a former head coach or maybe a former veteran coach on some other staff that they could bring with them. I don't hate the move. Steichen did a good job with Justin Herbert. He did a good job at adapting on the fly with a team that didn't have a ton of expectations this year. He did a good job at running an offense that didn't have arguably one of their best weapons in Austin Eckler for the majority of the season because of injuries. So I think he's a good candidate. I just would have liked to see them go a different direction. Like I mentioned on Friday and Saturday, there are veteran coaches that Sirianni has worked with in the past, from Anthony Lynn to Todd Haley to others. Now, we don't know what those guys' situations are. We don't know exactly if maybe those guys don't want to be offensive coordinators. Maybe those guys don't want to coach in the NFL this year. Maybe those guys don't want to be on Sirianni's staff because maybe Sirianni wants to be the play caller and they want to call their own plays. And if they're not allowed to call their own plays, then they won't be on staff. I'm just saying it's a possibility. So with all those possibilities in mind, that's why I'm going to give this a chance. And I hope you do too, because I want to see the Eagles be successful. Unlike some of you crazy people out there who want the Eagles to lose because you hate Howie Roseman, I want to see the Philadelphia team be successful. I want to see the local team do well. So I'm going to give Sirianni a chance to show us, not just in 1 month, not just in 1 year. I'm going to give him the same amount of time I gave Doug Peterson, if he has success like Peterson did. I want to give this guy a chance to show us why you hired Steichen and Gannon and you didn't go more veteran. Because you can always hire the young hot candidate, but does the young hot candidate always work out? Well, we're going to find out here in Philadelphia. You wanted new, you wanted fresh, you wanted the hot shot on the market. Well, you got the hottest commodities possible and the youngest commodities possible, because Philadelphia is going in a different direction. That's for sure, moving forward. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, we'll get to your text a little bit later in the hour at 609-403-0973. Also, we are live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Say hello to Jeff watching on YouTube. What is up, Jeff? Salute to you too, sir, on YouTube. Watching us on the YouTube feed. Also, watch on Facebook and Twitter. 973 ESPN, the Sports Bash with Mike Gill, Hunter Brody, Game Night with Josh Hennig, and more, all on the platforms. And, of course, Game Night being brought to you by my friends over at weightliftinghq.com. Weightliftinghq.com has all the equipment you need to work out from the comfort of your home. Whether you're someone who is stuck at home because of work and family, or maybe you do have a gym membership, but you can't get to the gym as often as you want. Whatever the reason is that you want to work out from home, weightliftinghq.com is here to help you. Use the code RADIO10 for 10% off your entire order at weightliftinghq.com. Bench and squat racks, kettlebells, dumbbells, cardio and fitness machines, and more. Whatever you need to get into the best shape of your life or whatever your goals may be, weightliftinghq.com is here to help you. Again, the code is radio10 at checkout for 10% off your entire order. That's radio10 at checkout for weightliftinghq.com. We'll get back to the Sixers coming up next. No Joel Embiid tonight for the Sixers versus the Pistons. What does that mean? We'll ask Kevin McCormick coming up next here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea City.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, of course, live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Hanging out with you here on 97.3 ESPN. 609-403-0973 is the text board. Joining us right now on the Boardwalk kind of hotline, we have one and only Kevin McCormick. You can follow him on Twitter at KevinMCC973. Sixers versus Pistons at the top of the hour right here on 97.3 ESPN. Kevin, how you doing this afternoon or evening, depending on how people want to view the day? It would help if I actually turned your microphone on, Kevin. That's my fault.
No worries. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. It was one of those deals where you got to turn one thing on for the music and one thing on for you, and I didn't hit the other button. So that's a bad job by me. So people are probably out there wondering, where's Kevin? Well, we see Kevin, but we couldn't hear Kevin. There we go. So we got you now. So how are you doing today? Let's try this again.
I'm doing good. I mean, Sixers are rolling. They're riding a little bit of a high now. Picked up two good wins after Boston. They had an ugly win against the Pistons, but I mean, those are the good wins in the grand scheme of things. So hopefully they're able to pull it out again tonight.
Now, you mentioned the game tonight. Let's get into that because the news came out earlier. Joel Embiid will not play tonight. We kind of saw this coming, right? At some point, Joel Embiid was going to get one of these random days of rest, right? We all kind of assumed that this might be coming down the line.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this news to break. I actually thought he wasn't going to play the last game just due to the two grueling games against Boston and how he kind of laid it all out in those games. I figured second half of a back-to-back where they had to travel, I thought that was going to be the game where he was going to get up off his feet, but it looks like they opted to go for it tonight. But I agree. This game was eventually going to come. Joel Embiid's been playing big minutes. He's been playing almost every day. He was due for a game off his feet.
Now, the 76ers are 0-3 without Joel Embiid in the lineup. So how do they get a win without the big man tonight?
You're going to need to see an upped performance from the supporting cast, whether it comes from Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, now that the whole starting unit is back together, well, without Embiid, but the whole unit in general of the rotation. Yeah, the fully healthy bench again with the return of Korkmaz. So hopefully it's no one guy is going to be able to fill the shoes that Embiid has been putting out this season with his MVP type performances. But as a whole, collectively, when you look at guys like Shake Milton, Tyrese Maxey, Furkan Korkmaz, Seth Curry, it can be done. It's going to take a collective effort, but it's what it's going to take.
Now, that collective effort you mentioned, I think part of that has to go to the guy who's been a hot topic for all of us in recent weeks. I did a little research for you, Kevin. So since the James Harden trade, Ben Simmons is averaging 13.4 points per game, 2 steals per game, 9.4 assists, and he's shooting 73.5% field goal percentage. So it's all above his regular season averages. So one could argue that since the James Harden trade happened, Ben Simmons actually has picked up his play.
Yeah, he's been phenomenal as of late. Even in that last Detroit game where he had arguably his best game of the season, I think the past 5 quarters we've seen from Ben Simmons has arguably been his best stretch of the entire year. But in terms of, I guess the irony of it coming right after the Harden trade, it could be one of two things. Maybe just hearing all those rumors swirl got in his head a little bit, and it has affected his play on the court. And then on the other hand, maybe after being assured that he's going to be here and he's a piece moving forward for this franchise, that it gave him a little bit of a confidence boost. And now that he knows that the Harden trade's over and done with. He can put it behind him, and now he can just get back to focusing on playing basketball, and it's showed in his play.
Yeah, and tonight, you're going to have an opportunity for him to really step up even more because without Embiid, that's that's not just your leading scorer, but that's your primary guy for the offense. So do you think we're going to see potentially a high output of scoring from Ben, or does he stick to, the distribution and only scoring when he need him to?
I would say in a situation like this, you would like to see him assert himself more as a scorer than a facilitator. Obviously, you're still going to need him to orchestrate the offense because that is his primary job out there. But if he can continue to assert himself on offense, similar to the way he did in the first game where he came right out from the get-go, asserted himself in the post, and then kind of worked his way back out and getting the guys around him going, I think that could be enough. If they're going to want to win this game, you're going to need to see Ben Simmons go for, back in that 17 to 20 point range.
Kevin McCormick joining us here on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. You can follow him on Twitter at KevinMCC973. Also, you can see him right now as we are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter here on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN with his multiple Phillies jerseys over his right shoulder, which would be your left on the screen there. Kevin, let's also touch on the rest of the team. Obviously, it's been an interesting last few days. What were your takeaways from the first Pistons game and then the Celtics game? Because those games were back-to-back games, so it's very hard in the NBA to win back-to-back games, especially when one's on the road and one's at home. So what were some of your takeaways from what you've seen from the Sixers for those two games?
I think there's been a couple takeaways. Obviously, the biggest one is it's great to see them have a back-to-back series against Boston and be able to pull out both games. Even though Boston was still without Tatum, that's a matchup where both teams are going to play each other hard no matter what. So the fact that Brad Stevens had the chance to adjust to the Sixers and they were still able to go out and finish out that second game with the victory was a big takeaway. And then looking at that first Pistons game, the biggest thing for me was seeing all three stars dominate together. Very rarely do you see a game where Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons dominate together, but you saw that in that Pistons game on Saturday. I forgot my days mixed up, and you needed it in a game like that as well because it was a very rough game for the second unit. Arguably the first rough game we've seen from that unit all season. I believe when there was about 4 minutes left in the third quarter, they only had about 5 bench points. So that was a game where you really needed to rely on your guys like Harris, Embiid, Simmons, and they stepped up. We saw Simmons go for 20, Embiid put on another 30-10 performance, and more from Tobias Harris. So seeing them continue to look like a legitimate big three was a major takeaway for me in that win against the Pistons.
Now, you mentioned a legitimate big three. One of the things you and I talked about on Friday's show that I wanted to kind of get a little further down the road with is, we need these guys to all fulfill their roles. And nobody's saying that they're any of those guys. But when you have a big three, when you have three high-level players, you need them all to play like those high-level players. If Durant and Kyrie and James Harden don't all play like we know they can, there's no way the Nets are going to go to the NBA Finals. But the same with the Sixers. If Embiid and Simmons and Harris can't play up to their potential, then they're not going anywhere either. So as of this moment, I know it's only been a handful of games. We're at what, 16 games at this point. So the Sixers, what have you seen from them that tells you this is a legitimate big three or not a legitimate big three?
I would say their success on the court would be the biggest thing that makes them look like a legitimate big three. As of now, the Sixers are 9-0 when all 5 starters play. And although you can say, part of that goes to what Seth Curry brings, it mainly speaks volumes to the play of the star players. I mean, we're talking about Joel Embiid arguably being a front runner for the MVP award early on this year. Tobias Harris is in the mix for all-star considerations if they do end up having it. He's broken that 50-40-90 mark. I believe he's shooting a career high from 3 right now at around 44%. And like we were just talking earlier at the top, Ben Simmons is finally starting to hit his stride with this team, averaging about 13, 9, and 9 over his last 5 games, shooting over 70% from the line in that stretch as well. So seeing them operate on both ends of the floor and them being able to just take care of business on a nightly basis is really starting to show how the three of them are starting to come together.
Who is the guy of those three that if you took out for the rest of the season would hurt the team the most. And I know everyone's going to say Embiid, but I'm not going to say those three. It's Simmons, it's Harris, and it's Curry, though, is the other three I'm thinking about. Because Seth Curry, you could argue, is having not just a career year, but Seth Curry is arguably the best shooter in the NBA right now. So we know about Embiid, but we know he's part of the main big three, but the other three around Embiid are just as important. So if you're without either Simmons, Harris, or Curry, which one has the greatest negative impact on this team?
I would have to say you're hurt the most without Simmons. I mean, and last year's playoff experience is a clear factor in that. Look at how easy the Boston Stars were able to just come down the court and get some easy buckets without the defensive Ben Simmons. And I think it's the two-way ability of Ben Simmons that gives him the biggest impact out of those three. Yes, Seth Curry has been shooting the lights out from deep, but with the attention that Joel Embiid's drawing, I mean, arguably you can't find another shooter who's going to shoot at the clip of Seth Curry, but you could go and find more shooters who are going to be able to shoot a decent clip when they're out there with Joel Embiid, when they can space the floor properly. Harris, I feel, is an interesting choice in that debate just because of what he's brought in terms of that legitimate second option behind Joel Embiid. But with the way Ben Simmons defends arguably all five positions, the way he can orchestrate the offense and just kind of be that solidified guy to make the players around him better, but also lock up the opposing team's best player, he would leave the biggest impact if gone.
Kevin McCormick joining us here on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN. Follow me at Kevin MCC 973. Sixers versus Pistons tonight on 97.3 ESPN. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. here on the radio. Of course, you can watch the show right now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and listen to us also on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Kevin, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I think that people cannot overlook the fact that they have a huge marquee matchup on Wednesday night. Obviously, that's the big star attraction for the week. It's LeBron and the Lakers, the NBA champs coming in the Philadelphia, and you will be in the house. So what are some of the things that people can look forward to with that game? Because I'm assuming part of the reason why you're sitting Embiid tonight is for him to play on Wednesday night.
There's a lot of things to look at, and I completely agree in the sense of you're getting Embiid off his feet early because he's going to have a very tough matchup on Wednesday. A lot of times when I've come on and I've talked to you about how Joel Embiid has pretty much dominated every matchup that's put in front of him, but when you look at that Lakers lineup, that is a very interesting one in terms of the very few teams that might have the size to potentially slow down Joel Embiid. We've seen what Marc Gasol has been able to do defending Joel Embiid in the past. Yes, you can say he's years older, but he's still an experienced veteran big man who knows what he's doing against a guy like Joel. Not to mention, if the Lakers were to bring a double team, that second guy is Anthony Davis, who is another perennial defensive player of the year candidate in his own right. So having to deal with those two front court players should be a tough task for Embiid, let alone what LeBron James is doing all out there. But in terms of what I'm looking for, I think it's just going to be a slugfest. I mean, you're looking at two high-powered teams who are playing great basketball right now. The Lakers have been playing really great, leading the West in their own right. So just seeing all those star-studded matchups, whether it's Embiid and AD, Ben Simmons, LeBron James, the bench battle, it's going to be one of those, whoever can win those little fights in the trenches can be the team that pulls out the victory that night.
And I'm not saying this to overlook the Pistons tonight, but obviously anytime you have a game with that kind of marquee, you can't ignore it, especially with Embiid being held out today. And so the other thing I want to know about the game is, we saw, he didn't do it the whole game, but Simmons did guard at times Jeremy Grant on Saturday. Do you expect him to continue to do that tonight? And then does that translate to him possibly guarding LeBron James the most of the night on Wednesday? Or do you think the Sixers kind of go with the rotating bodies thing like they did with Jaylen Brown with the Celtics?
In terms of Wednesday, I would have to say Simmons is going to be the primary defender for LeBron James, just because it's one of those, when you look at that matchup, Frank Vogel isn't going to let Joel Embiid beat him. And I feel like Doc Rivers on that same end isn't going to let LeBron James beat the Sixers that night. So Ben Simmons is your best defender. He's your biggest body on the perimeter. If anybody's going to keep up with LeBron James, it's going to be Ben Simmons. So I would say he will most likely spend almost all of his time on LeBron James that night. And I think the same goes with Jeremy Grant tonight, just because with the injury woes that the Pistons have as well, with no Blake Griffin, no Derrick Rose, Jeremy Grant's really been the guy leading that offense, and seeing what Simmons did against him on Saturday, holding him to just 11 points on very poor shooting, I think you're going to need to continue to slow him down if you want to keep yourself in this game with no Embiid.
Two more for you, Kevin. I always appreciate you jumping on here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. So if the Sixers win tonight, which I think people still expect them to win, even though it won't be as, probably definitive, as most people would believe, they win because why?
Hard-nosed defense, I would have to say. Just because with no Embiid, you're losing all of that scoring. If you're going to hang your hat tonight and come away with a victory, it's going to have to be on the defensive end and slowing them down. And this might be another grueling game. I mean, the Pistons played them very hard on Saturday. They were a very competitive team that shocked me in their own right for being a 3-win team. They play very hard. So if you're going to want to keep yourself in a position to win tonight, you're going to have to continue to defend hard, hit your free throws, take care of the basketball.
All right. My final thing I got for you is this. I saw your tweet earlier today, and I was going to tweet at you, but I realized that at the time I saw your tweet 5 hours ago that I didn't have a good enough answer for you, because how could I criticize for you for making a choice of something without making a choice myself of that? So you claim on Twitter that the best uniform in MLB history is the Phillies powder blue, and it isn't even a debate. That is what you said on Twitter. Now, the reason why I have an issue with this is because I think the Phillies powder blue is overrated.
Oh, come on, Josh. Don't do this to me.
I prefer the Phillies pinstripe to the powder blue. I think the powder blue is very 70s, 80s feeling, and it's a part of the past more so than it is an actual good look. To me, the greatest baseball uniform of all time is the Oakland A's, because the green and the yellow is an amazing contrast, and people forget that the uniform looks like that because the A's used to be the Philadelphia Athletics. So technically, it's a Philadelphia uniform that's been adopted by another city. So I go with the Athletics uniform, and you're going with the powder blue.
Yeah, I will always defend that powder blue. I don't know. It's just one of those things. There's just something about it. I enjoy the nostalgia of it. Obviously, it was way before my time when they rocked those jerseys. But yeah, the jersey's just so clean. I think it's such a great color pattern together. It's just, they always look great. Hard to bet against them.
I mean, look, the maroon P is a solid color look. But for me, if it's the Phillies uniform, I like the Phillies pinstripe. I think it looks clean. I think it looks sharp. And if I got to go with the all-time baseball uniform, give me the green and the yellow of the A's, because I for some reason, I feel like that color just feels like special, like baseball look. Like I feel like there's baseball uniforms and then there's the A's green and yellow, but that's just me.
I could agree to that. I think there definitely is that baseball feel to it. Another jersey I think that is severely underrated is the zipper jersey that they pulled out 2 years ago that they only wore once. Everyone torched them on Twitter, but I was kind of in the minority there. I enjoy them. I think they also have a nice kind of different feel to them. I think just the zipper aspect itself, given that kind of quarter zip vibe to it. But all in all, I mean, if I will die on the hill of that powder blue jersey.
I think you're better off with the powder blue jersey than you are with the zipper look, because the problem with the zipper look is that it doesn't even look like a baseball uniform. It looked more like a dude at the local softball game in the beer league that it did an actual baseball, Major League Baseball uniform. Now, the one thing I will say is a very good look that gets overlooked with Phillies history was back when it started in 94, the blue hats with the red P. I feel like we don't get that brought back enough. I feel like we got that back a couple times during the Utley years, but not enough in recent years. I would like to see that get a little more rotation, personally.
Wait, are you talking about the baby blue with the maroon P?
No, it's like a cobalt blue.
The dark blue with the red P. Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's not like super dark, but it's got the like sharp contrast blue.
Yeah,
it's almost like a stronger version of the Facebook blue.
Yeah, that's what they would wear when they wore the cream jerseys, right? It was like that alternate hat.
I don't care about the cream jersey. I just like the hat. That's just a personal preference of mine.
In terms of hats, I think it's so basic to say, but just the all red with the white P, it all fits so perfectly, and just like, I don't know, the white P looks so nice on the red hat. If I'm going hat, I think I would have to say just their generic hat.
Yeah, the only Phillies hat I have is actually a black Phillies hat with a red P on it. So I don't even remember where I got it from. I think a family member of mine got it from me. So it's like the most random thing in the world. I think it's like it might be the only one in existence, but I've never seen the Phillies wear a black hat, but apparently I have it, and it's an official Major League Baseball hat. So there you go.
Hey, it could be this lost artifact. You could be holding on to something great there.
I could be, and I've probably worn it about 200 times, so it's probably depreciated the value by about like $3,000 or whatever it is. He's Kevin McCormick. You can follow him on Twitter for all your NBA and Sixers analysis at Kevin MCC973, and as all guests, he appeared on the Boardwalk kind of hotline. Kevin, always appreciate the time, and I appreciate you humoring me about the baseball stuff.
Anytime, Josh. You take care.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget my FanDuel sports pick for the night coming up in just roughly about 9 to 10 minutes from now. Of course, you can jump on the text board at 609-403-0973. Also, we are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at 97.3 ESPN. The Watch Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig live in the Matt Black Kia studios. Of course, don't forget the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Sea City.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, 97.3 ESPN mobile app, and Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Of course, you can follow the show, watch us live each and every day, the Sports Bash with Mike Gill and Hunter Brody, and Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN. I'll give you my picks for the night, brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook in just a moment. I want to remind you, of course, no Joel Embiid tonight, so that means that it's going to be Dwight Howard in your starting lineup for your Philadelphia 76ers. Your full lineup looks like this. It's for the Philadelphia 76ers, Dwight Howard in the middle, along with Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Tobias Harris, and Danny Green. So the only change to be made is no Joel Embiid, and he will be on the bench, which is why I am saying for my DFS pick of the night, go Dwight Howard. This guy has been a rebounding monster this year. And I know a lot of those DFS and fantasy sports apps and platforms, rebounding is one of those things that gets you a lot of value, but nobody really talks about it. And if you look at Dwight Howard this year, he doesn't score a lot of points. He's not really out there trying to score. But listen to this. You know how many games he has had with double-digit rebounds? He has had 8 games with double-digit rebounds. And right now, on the FanDuel Sportsbook app, it's over-under is 10.5. So I'm saying Dwight Howard, my DFS, and I like that over 10.5. I'll also give you my my FanDuel Sportsbook pick of the night in just a moment. But I want to remind you that FanDuel Sportsbook has something else great with basketball this year. And so the next time you're watching basketball, I've got a perfect way for you to get on the action for free. That's right, absolutely free with FanDuel. I'm talking about NBA in-play. It's absolutely free to play on the FanDuel app. And it features all the in-game fun of live betting. NBA in-play turns every quarter of every game into a free contest where you can win real cash prizes. So while you're watching the game, all you have to do is predict the outcome of the plays and game props before they happen to claim your share of the prize pool. And best of all, a new contest starts every quarter of every game, giving you even more ways to win. With FanDuel is the exclusive home of NBA in-play, so the action is always available right at your fingertips on the FanDuel app. So maybe you don't want to get involved in FanDuel Sportsbook tonight. You can get involved in NBA in-play with the FanDuel app. Don't miss your shot. Get in the game and download the FanDuel app to start playing NBA in-play today. And while you're watching that Sixers game tonight, it might be up to you for NBA in-play because with Dwight Howard going for all those rebounds, you have an opportunity to get involved on NBA in-play with the FanDuel app. Also, think about this. with no Joel Embiid out there, someone to pick up the scoring slack. Is that Ben Simmons? Is it Shake Milton? Does Shake Milton go for 20 points tonight? Does Seth Curry go for 20 points tonight? How many more points does Tobias Harris score? And don't forget, the Pistons are not a walkover. They had trouble with them the other night. So NBA in play is a way for you to get in on the action and not have to put any money on the line up front for you to win with FanDuel's app. Now, my FanDuel Sportsbook pick of the night is actually another game. It's the Denver Nuggets at the Mavericks over 223. These are two teams that they just can't stop anybody. Let's be realistic. Both these teams are allowing over 109 points per game. We saw that I think the Nuggets are tired. They went to overtime 2 straight games with the Suns, and the Mavs, they still don't have Dorian Finney-Smith or Max Kleber, so you know that they don't really have their defensive guys out there. So what does that mean? I expect there to be points scored, and because these are two teams that don't have a ton of great defense out there, I love the Tim Hardaway over 16.5. He's scoring on the year over 17 points per game. He has scored over 16 points 9 out of 13 games this year as Tim Hardaway Jr. So with FanDuel Sportsbook, you have the same game in-game parlay. It is plus 219 right now for the Nuggets and Mavs over 223 combined with the Tim Hardaway 16.5 points. You can do that all with FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or to play. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be an NJ or PA to participate with FanDuel Sportsbook. Again, I got over 223 in the over-under on the Nuggets Mavs. I got the over 16.5 on the Tim Hardaway points and the over 10.5 on the Dwight Howard rebounds. Those are some picks for you on the evening. Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN here on GameNight. Of course, text board is open at 609-403-0973 to get on the conversation before we get out of here. Also, when you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, you can comment on the stream, and we will get you up on the board here on the video feed. I can't overlook the wild weekend as well, not just for football because we have a great Super Bowl matchup, but also UFC 257. You all know how much of a diehard UFC fan I am, and I'll admit, I didn't expect Conor McGregor to lose in that fashion. I thought this was going to be a much deeper fight, but Dustin Poirier did two things on Saturday night that really stood out to me. I'll get to the pick I did get right because I did give you a gambling pick that did scored big on Saturday night. But before we get to that, McGregor, he got suckered into a brawl. Dustin Poirier is a slugger. He is a guy who wants to slug, and McGregor, for whatever reason, thought it would be a good idea to just go blow for blow with him and take his shots like it was nothing. And as soon as he got that takedown, did Poirier, you knew that McGregor was in trouble because McGregor wasn't expecting it. Now, McGregor got out of it pretty quickly. He didn't stay down at all, so you got to give McGregor credit for that. But, man, Poirier was really hitting him a couple times with some really solid shots, and it was like McGregor wasn't taking him seriously. And that got McGregor out of his game plan, out of his boxing, because he's a boxer by nature. McGregor is not a pure mixed martial artist like guys like Poirier are. He is a guy who has a great boxing background, who can also be a kickboxer and can knock people out. He's got knockout power, and he's got excellent speed, but he's not a brawler. He's not a grinder. He's not a guy who mucks it up very well. He's got the great shoulder strike, but he doesn't have great muck-it-up boxing and fighting skills. And as a result, that's a big part of the reason why Poirier was able to just clock him several times before he finally went down and finished the fight. I think Poirier needs to be in line to get the title. I think this whole idea of Khabib holding the division for ransom, I think is absolutely a joke. The guy retired. The guy said he's done. Why is the guy still labeled the lightweight champion? It's disgusting. I think it's an insult to all these fighters. Listen, the only person that Gaethje has lost to recently was Khabib. Let Gaethje fight Poirier, or let Poirier run it back with McGregor, or get Charles Oliveira involved. Get Poirier a fight for the belt, all right? Tell Khabib he's either got to come back by, I don't know, July 4th, or he has to vacate the belt, or something sooner, because He shouldn't be listed as a lightweight champion. He said he was retired. He said he's done. He said he's not coming back. So if that's the case, let these guys fight. Let these guys go out there and fight for the belt. I think it's an absolute joke and an embarrassment that they're not letting this belt be available. Poirier is the interim champion. Gaethje's an interim champion. Let them fight or let Poirier fight Oliveira or something. Get it done. Get it done, UFC. And by the way, I told you all that Michael Chandler was going to beat Dan Hooker. He was an underdog. He beat Hooker. He blasted him. Why is it that on Monday, January 25th, the Michael Chandler is not ranked yet on the UFC rankings? Their official rankings. He is not ranked. That's an embarrassment. UFC, I don't care that you were in Abu Dhabi. Wake up. Let's go. These guys are fighting their tails off, and you're still giving Habib reverence because he's Habib. Let's just stop. We got a message over here. Paul, watching on Facebook, says, Josh, I am stoked for the Super Bowl matchup. It's not every day that we get to see LeBron versus Jordan, Brady versus Mahomes. It's got me most psyched for Super Bowl since the Eagles won it last. Hey, Paul, listen, we're going to get to see a huge, huge game. I'm excited for it. I'm excited that you're excited. Listen, man, this is going to be a game that goes down for the ages, in my opinion. I think that these coaches are going to have these guys so prepared. We're going to see a shootout, I believe, between Brady and Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Of course, you hear Super Bowl right here on 97.3 ESPN. Thanks to Kevin McCormick for joining the show. Sixers and Pistons coming up next on 97.3 ESPN.